Hello, everybody. Welcome to Everything in Moderation, the International Edition, episode 9. What are we discussing today, boys?
How's it going, guys? It's Daniel Irons again, and today we are talking about media literacy. What is that? Sounds boring. No, but real quick, media literacy, what that means is your ability to take information that you get and kind of sift through it and find out what is good information, what's bad information, right? So that's just a simple part of media literacy, but this is the part that we're focusing on today because it's most prevalent, especially in America, but all over the world. So, just like a little like thing to kind of get you excited about this and why media literacy is important. So, let's take us back to Germany real quick. Let's take it back to 1933 specifically, when Hitler just rose to power. So during then, he proclaimed the Third Reich, and then he was starting his transition into building the camps through 1933 to 1939. And from 1936 to 1939, the camps are there and they were killing Jews. So we look at that period, the world was is pretty unknown to the world, like what was going on. Like even America, you'll see during that time frame, made Hitler part of the Times magazine as the one of the best people ever. Like they had a bomb on all of them and everybody. Well, they had Hitler there too. So we have to wonder why that is. Like he was committing horrible, horrible crimes, and it's because of media literacy. So, real quick, Lugenpress is a lot. A lot of people compare fake news to Lugenpress, right? Well, it's not really a good comparison. I mean, they mean the same thing, but Hitler's using it a different way, right? So Hitler was using it to control information in his bubble he had there. It's very nationalistic. So he also did that because Germany itself, during that time, coming out of an economic depression, was very media illiterate. So an important thing to note is the more media literate your country is, the less susceptible it is to crazy people. So I would definitely like to just start it with that and kind of open it up, see what everybody else to say about media literacy.
Yeah. So definitely there's a lot of even there's people in other countries that have blocked people from seeing what people can see. Especially a good example is China. Like their dictator Xi Jinping has actually his blocks his people from seeing what they're able to see. And even at home in the U.S., we're set right now with social media censorship, but mostly focused on China. Like they actually they block people from like basically if something's bad about China, then that's something that they don't want them to see. And like China's is a perfect example. I learned about that last semester in my U.S. China relations class, and just not a good site to have. But that's a present thing going on right now. I'm not sure,
Well,
Pat. What's your
well, yeah.
that?
Off the topic of China, specifically Chinese Communist Party, which is known for censoring a lot of information that should be going out there for other countries who do not have the information. One of the examples is the Uyghurs and what's going on there in terms of imprisonment of them and censoring their ability to speak, and also their information on what they're tracking in terms of that information is not coming out. They're also lying in their media. They're lying in their news articles. So countries like the U.S. or other countries who are concerned can't really get that information. You have the United Nations have about 20 to 30 countries sign a petition to go check that out, to say that there are crimes going on, human crimes going on there. But then you have 30 other countries saying, no, it's totally fine. So what really counts as a crime internationally, and how can we even read that if we can't get any information there? It's very dangerous. to not have this information. And then on the other end, you have too much information coming out and you can't even figure out what is real and what is fake. So this is occurring in China. This also occurs in the US and a plethora of other states around the world. And to be able to track it, it is very difficult and it's very dangerous. So it's definitely something to look at.
Yeah, I would even go further into it. Just looking at China, why, Patrick, do you think that the Chinese citizens are media illiterate in this case? Since a lot of the Chinese mostly really don't care about this situation, even if they know. Why do you think they are media illiterate in this case?
It's funny. I think when talking about China, I feel that it's not media illiterate for the Chinese. I feel they know exactly what's going on. They're living it. And this isn't to the people. This is to the government itself. This is to the Chinese Communist Party. We're not going to say that each individual of China is bad. They're not in control. So it's really media illiteracy for countries outside of China, because China does not want other people and governments to see what they're doing. This goes for the Uyghurs, however that might be pronounced. I might be getting it wrong. This also has to do with the coronavirus cases. We were under the impression or the assumption that they had a vaccine coming that was supposed to be quite efficient. What comes out now is that it's 17% efficient from the last time I checked, as well as it is totally not under control. You have millions of cases coming out in China. Again, huge population there. So that's a great question. It has to do with media literacy for places like the United States, for the other countries that China's trying to hide from. But again, truth always comes out eventually.
I think that you could also attribute that challenge for Chinese people to their culture as well, because the Asian culture is more or less like a push to conform with your fellow man rather than being an individual. So like in China, you probably wouldn't see as many as like people like screaming fake news here. Like it's more, it's louder here. Whereas in China, it's if someone is saying that, they're probably not going to be heard from. So
because in China, they're used to it. They're used to it in China. We're not.
They work with what they got.
It's a very good thing you brought that up, because this draws into one of the biggest reasons why media literacy occurs in any country, and it's primarily through education. So if you have an education system, like for China, for example, their education system only promotes communist ideas. So what does that mean? They vilify capitalist ideas or any time of like independent ideologies. So if you're being taught from day one at school what to believe, you're not going to be able to make conclusions for yourself, and that could technically be said with certain things in U.S. history books, certain things we leave out in U.S. history books as well. But, it really is up to the education system of different countries to help people, because that's the only way people are going to become media literate. So let's think about this real quick. How do people become media literate? What are the qualifications to become media literate?
Okay, so what I would say first is no matter what you're looking at, there is going to be some sort of bias, whether it's for the government or whether it's for one party or another. So it's just going to happen. There's no person that's 100% objective. So the first thing that you do is you look at the database that you're allowed to look at. I'm unsure of how accurate that would be in China, but the US is a good example. If somebody wants to see the crime rates, look at the racial crime rates and ratios there, or see a wage gap, let's say, what will you look at? Maybe the Census Bureau, the FBI database there. These are the most accurate calculations that people have, the facts there. Then you can cross-reference that and get some more information from, let's say, look at the Constitution there, look at the actual factual info that you have with your information there related to what you're reading. And then when you're more educated there, things that your school doesn't teach you, you say, oh, this is wrong, or hey, this is extremely fabricated. Let me go check a different area. And you keep looking. People want to be informed. That's a good thing. I feel now that a lot of things are becoming more politicized, people want to get more information. But I've been asked a lot of times, Patrick, I want to know some more things, but I don't want to get biased information. What do I do? I tell them, don't look at Fox News, don't look at CNN, don't look at these news companies that just want to make money. Get your facts straight, learn your history a bit, and then do your information and your research online or from a newspaper. That's the best way. And advice for other countries, I would say try to do the same thing there from what you have. I know it's probably more difficult in places like Japan and China, where their education system from as little as like the pre-K school is all about the government. And we could go into that more.
Yeah,
So,
I know
that's my
this is
advice
more
there.
of like an international podcast, but I know this is very relatable to what's going on in the U.S. With especially this started also in the era of Trump when Trump started coining the term fake news, and some people and immediately people just said that he just using the term because he's watching news that he's just it's something that came out because he didn't like it, but it turns out actually it was something that never happened. And this is why people need to be really aware when they read the news, especially here at home in the U.S. or in another country. And this is really I think the bad thing about yellow journalism is that like you never really know what people are publishing nowadays, and a lot of people have said it's best that the career of journalism is dead. It's been dead for years, and I don't think it will ever be back anytime soon. Unless there are I'm not saying all journalists are bad, but there's like a few like reputable ones. But if you're gonna watch like like the biased channels like Fox and CNN, like be careful about what you watch. And I know there are some good people on Fox that I watch, and they say to stay independent, but it's just be careful what you watch and make sure you always double check your sources.
Yeah,
I think a
definitely.
major point with that is that when these people are writing for Fox News, writing for CNN, it's not like they're publishing that on their own. They have to give it to someone up top that reads it, and it has to please them. And they're like, no, 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 this isn't good. And it probably goes through several edits before it is even released. So at that point, you could give certain journalists the benefit of the doubt, like they didn't really kind of mean it in a certain way, but they were kind of pushed to do that for their own job.
For their
Like,
career.
yeah. So, like, I mean, we talked about it on 2 episodes ago on the American podcast about like Donald Trump being banned from Twitter. And we kind of like made it an analogy to be like, all right, like these people, like for a news site, if you write something that they don't like, they have um, they're able to fire you. So like in terms of news and media, that's where like this could sometimes get a little wishy-washy. That's why like independent journalism. I know Anthony was gonna kind of talk about that later in the podcast. He's gonna give a little plug early, but yeah,
No, yeah.
the being able to publish stuff independently means that it's your own thoughts. It's less filtered than it would be from a big news media site.
Yeah, definitely. And I would definitely say you guys brought up some great points about why media literacy, illiteracy occurs. And a common theme among all your points is that there is a lack of problem solving that is going on. And that is exactly what it is. So think of information as a yes or no scenario, right? And you have so much data points, and some data is wrong, some is not. So you take your own problem solving to figure out what is right and what is wrong. So real quick, let's go into the reasons of why media literacy occurs in countries. And we're going to look on some figures here. So this is from the 2019 Media Literacy Index for Europe. And they found a couple connections that are pretty interesting. So,
Anthony, if you want to share your screen, you could.
yeah, sure. Let me just go
That's great.
here. Alrighty. Can you guys see this?
Fucking technology, gotta love it.
Can you
Speaking
see
of yes, media technology,
That's
perfect.
So as
It's
you
visual.
see from these indexes, so the higher the corruption perceptions of a country, the lower the result in the media literacy index. The higher the distrust in scientists in a country, the lower the result in the media literacy index. And then the higher the distrust in journalists in a country, the lower is result in media literacy index. So I have a question for you guys. Where do you think America lies if these are the metrics that determine media illiteracy? Is America really bad or medium or good?
I'll
would
take a
say it's
shot at this
bad.
one. We're bad.
Yeah,
we're very,
I
very
mean,
bad.
we pretty much hit all these
I'll go.
metrics, right?
We hit all of them.
Every single one. So I could go into that just looking at it for the first time. Distrust in journalists, 100%, especially from Trump's message, whether people like it or not. You know, people who follow him are going to distrust the media. And then you have the corruption, definitely corrupt. You have politicians, both sides of the aisle, who are making very high figures for reasons we do not know fully. I mean, I'm sure we could find some, but so they must have ties to certain areas. You know, you're not a politician make 7-figure digits, you know, out of nowhere. That's not how it works. You're not there to make money. You're there to help the people. So you have what you call the swamp, as you know, Trump would say. Then highest distrust in scientists. Sure, not everybody trusts scientists. You have people arguing whether global warming is true or not. You know,
and also there are a lot
of course
people
it's not
who,
for everybody, but yeah.
There are people also during the pandemic who stopped trusting Anthony Fauci after a while.
Perfect example.
People who don't trust him.
But why do they not trust him? Because he lied.
Because yeah, he lied, and also he keeps changing the narrative, so people stop trusting him.
Yes, he contradicts
and Trump fired
himself.
him.
And that's a great thing to bring out. When it comes to science, it's become so politicized. I feel that it 100% feel that the vaccine, the pandemic should not have been politicized. It's 100% been politicized, and that's another divisive measure. That's another thing. People even look at the vaccine. A lot of people were afraid to take the vaccine, yet they didn't know that the vaccine has been worked on for years. They didn't just start doing it. You know, so there's misinformation on whether something is effective. What's the best thing to do? Will this kill me? So you look at big corporations, you look at politicians making way too much money. You have to realize it's about money. They want money. How are they going to do that? By making the narrative more spicing up the narrative. And it's bad. Fauci contradicted himself multiple times. You know, when Trump was getting a lot of criticism under something by Fauci then had to admit under oath that what he said was not true. That's not to say Fauci was always wrong, but when you start to contradict yourself, there are issues, and the distrust goes up another step. So that's a great point about that.
I think that another thing is just with science, a lot of people kind of see science as a thing that is stagnant when in reality there's more steps taken with different tests and everything every day. So it's not really an unmoving like discipline. I just wanted to plug that.
One thing I've noticed when the
definitely.
pandemic started is I saw people like on like not like I wouldn't say like not like every news network though, but one specifically it was just on NBC that there was a guest on the show, and he just like was saying that you're more likely to get COVID in a Lowe's. No, you're more likely to get COVID in a small business than you are to get in a Lowe's, and he said it was science. And I think the host of the show actually said, "Oh, you're doing a disservice to the public," and they started arguing. And this is the thing I've noticed during the pandemic. Even the governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, did this too. That that he would say the COVID stuff he was saying at his briefing would be science, and meanwhile he didn't give any charts to back it up. And so this again, I mean, the pandemic definitely has brought out the worst and the best in our leaders. I mean, they were even like, even Deborah Birx, she, said stay home for Thanksgiving. Meanwhile, she goes to Delaware to celebrate with her family. Then the mayor of Denver, he ends up, going to, he tells all of his residents to stay home for Thanksgiving. Meanwhile, he goes to another state to celebrate with his sister. I mean, like, you can't make this stuff up. If you're going to, if you're going to put in rules, you should follow them too.
Yeah. Just real quick, if I could just jump in. So you guys definitely brought up some amazing points about that. And if I can jog your minds a little bit, what do you guys think the connection between all these points are? Why is it that these points are the ones that indicate why a nation is media literate? Any thoughts? It's very hard to guess.
No, yeah, I have my ideas. I'm trying to just figure it in a good order. So I think it really depends on what news organization you're talking about. I'm going to put
I'm talking
Fox
about the corruption in the government. I'm talking the higher
yeah.
distrust in scientists, and then the journalists as well. If I'm going to give you a
So
little hint, it involves what they give to people. What the government would be the element, the journalist would be the element, and the scientist would be. What do they give people as a service?
Guidance.
Yes,
right.
that's great.
Yes.
Guidance.
We only know what
information.
and we only know what they tell us for
Yes.
the most part. That's what we think until we look further into it. And I know we could go more into that. I just wanted to make a quick point to bring out the international aspect. When people are and were criticizing certain governments and also comparing the United States to other countries, which, by the way, has the most COVID-related deaths, however you want to put it, it's important to note the type of government of each country. So I heard somebody say that Sweden was doing really well. They had everybody stuck in their houses. They weren't allowed out, all this stuff. Well, it's important to note that Sweden's a unitary state. Of course, there are certain parts that are decentralized, but if you compare Sweden, which is smaller than the US, as a centralized, as a unitary state, to the United States, which has a federalist system in a way, each state with its own laws, very different and much harder for the US to regulate because each state has its own laws in terms of this. Trump couldn't and Biden shouldn't either put executive orders that control all states and everything. It's a bit too much power there. If you want to criticize the president on using their power too much or overusing their power, that's an example. Other countries can do that because they don't have that federalist system. The US does. That's why it's more difficult. So just for those who want to take a look and compare different governments, is this unitary? Is this federalist here? Is the central government more important and more powerful here? That's a great thing to look at. And then again, compared to media literacy, people will paint the United States or another country bad, but not bring up why the response wasn't as effective. It's more complicated, and people should look into that before just looking at the media aspect. Look at the facts.
Yeah, definitely. Just to draw us to another topic, let's talk out and look at the two extremes of the field. The best country in the media literacy and the worst country in media literacy. So the best country, technically, in this index is Finland. Why Finland? They're some random country in Europe, right? So if you look at Finland on these specific metrics, if you look at the corruption index, they are actually on one of the top parts of the corruption index. I believe they are in the top 5. Another thing would be the scientists. They definitely have a lot of trust in their scientists. If you look at any of the health departments in Finland right now in coronavirus, you'll see people follow whatever they say. It's very different, and it's very similar to America, where they give people a choice of what to do. Unlike Britain, you can get a fine if you move out the house.
Right.
But these people have independence, and they still choose to follow the rules in terms of coronavirus. So that's another reason why their cases are so low. And the most important bit to this is journalism when it comes to media literacy, because journalism in Finland is much, much different than it is in the United States. In Finland, if you as a journalist ask a question to a politician and you don't answer that question, you have a ton of politicians giving non-answers in the United States. If you do that in Finland, what will happen to you? The next reporter is going to ask the same exact question and then say at the end, can you please answer this question unlike you did last time? And they will do that on end. and annoy the guy. There's actually really funny clips in the Finland government whenever there's someone like that, because they just get berated by these journalists. You know, these are the type of government that really takes its media literacy seriously. Right.
That's interesting. I mean, you brought up the government and the freedom aspect comparing to the United States. That makes sense. It's a parliamentary system, and it's a federacy as well. So it has similarities to the United States in terms of the democratic aspect, and that's also great to mention the culture. So you bring up certain culture. I think the culture will shape the literacy of
Yes.
media. You know, China's culture, starting from, let's say, Confucianism, because that took over a lot in terms of education, and then respecting elders, all that whole broad aspect. And then you have United States current culture in terms of don't trust the media, don't trust these certain areas, and then you have the other side saying no, trust everything.
Yes.
That's
Definitely.
that's great to mention.
And
Finland is quite unison in that area. Very
one of the most
very
important
collective.
differences between most countries and Finland is they teach media literacy in their English classes. So you'll have students getting problems like this. They'll have one source of information, and they'll have a whole bunch of stuff being told to them. And they have to bring it back to the teacher and tell them what is a lie and what is not. And they have to use what you use today, websites and stuff. And if you do any research on media literacy, you'll find out that because of the transformation of information nowadays, most people use the right side of their brain and the left. Because when you read, you use the left side. When you look at things, you use the right side. And that's how computers are naturally. So it's a different type of thinking. It's almost as if you receive this information in a unrefined way. And in your mind, you're going to have to make conclusions. It's up to you, right? But when you're reading, you read something, it's subjective. You know, you make your own conclusions about what it means or anything because you're imagining it. It's a very left brain idea. So I would say, you know, that is one of the reasons why Finland is so successful in their media literacy program.
No, yeah, and I'm trying to relate that, you know, in connection to the United States in terms of voter turnout. Of course, voter turnout this year was somehow much higher than usual, almost 10% more. Right. We could go into that for another time. But yeah, Finland definitely has a 70.76% average turnout, which is definitely more than the United States. It's also similar to that of South Africa, I know from the top of my head, which usually averages around 70-something%. So that's something to look at in terms of voter turnout and education and people wanting to be informed, voting off of correct information. That's good. It's a good thing.
Definitely.
I don't think that's too disputable.
So could you guys guess what the worst is in media illiteracy in the whole world?
Either China or Russia has to be
or
North Korea.
That's a little bit worse. There you go. You got it. That's
Which
North
one?
Korea.
North Korea?
Not surprised.
Any guesses on why they're so bad at their media literacy?
Well, they do have a
dictator
dictator
bad at a lot
as the
of
president.
things.
Their country is literally a fantasy land. It might as well be an amusement park.
I have to look up the name. They're the only country that has something where they still have past politicians or people holding office as gods. Let me look that up. This is a
North
thing.
Korea is still going to be the same
that?
way it is until Kim Jong-un, leaves office or if he dies. That's literally the only way North Korea will ever be that way.
Someone worse takes his place.
Well, his daughter would take his place, or his sister.
But Anthony, you brought up a great point. Once again, you know, it is because their government is a dictatorship.
I know.
So what are the weapons of a dictatorship against its people? Because it's an active conflict when you have a dictatorship, because, you know, that's not going to work out. You know, people are not going to like one person ruling everything they do unless you start controlling them in some way. So what are these weapons that North Korea has against its people to control media literacy?
Missiles, nuclear weapons. Also, besides North Korea, Also, the Castro regime in Cuba, like that, Cuba will be the same way until they get rid of the Castro regime. Same thing with China and Xi Jinping. It will be the same way until Xi Jinping's out, or unless the family's out. It's just the way how these communist regimes work.
Right. How exactly does North Korea though try to enforce media illiteracy? How do they get their citizens to be media illiterate?
Like Christian said, like literally the whole country is like a fantasy land.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Well,
pretty
yeah,
much.
but why? So it all, well, in a dictatorship, it all has to surround who is in power. So,
Yeah, well,
and
I
that
was just
we
about
can
to
go into
explain that, but you
Yeah,
can go ahead
just
though.
real quick, just to get at this one, it's education.
Yeah.
Education is the single way North Korea controls its media illiteracy. So if you don't teach people how to discern ideas, ideas from facts or information from truth, if you can't teach people that, they're not going to learn it on themselves unless they're, decently smart, together, or someone else teaches them. So there's not a lot of people that can problem solve like that. So if, we're very surprised when we hear that North Korean people believe that Kim Jong-un doesn't poop. But how,
I'm not surprised.
think about it, put yourself in their shoes. If you have never been exposed to any kind of problem solving class or any kind of anything to get you to question the information that you receive, you're not going to question it because it's easier to accept information in a boxed up form than it is to open it up and see what's good and what's bad. So education is definitely the primary role why North Korea is the way it is in terms of media literacy.
Well, you could connect that to every single other country. Look at Finland. Yeah. You were just talking about how good their education system is on media literacy and being able to question things. Of course, that exists in certain aspects in the US and other countries, but if Finland's doing great there, North Korea is doing terrible. It's a pattern that you could relate to every single country. So it's great that you mentioned that.
Yeah, I was just about to say, it's kind of like in a way, where how people in the media said that Trump was worse than Hitler. I mean, Hitler tried to exterminate an entire race of people. Trump, just hurt your feelings. That's all he did.
The reason for that is people, Trump has the America first mentality, and people will say, oh, that's nationalist. You look at Hitler, they say he's a hyper nationalist or super nationalist, however you want to frame it. It's not the same thing, especially when you're comparing someone who murdered millions of people due to believing there was a higher race to somebody who actually is trying to deregulate a lot of the government. So I feel like it's important that people, again, learn the facts on what certain governments are, compare it to the media shown in those countries, compare it to the education system. These are all things to look at. Of course, it's complex and it can be hard, but it's important to train your brain in that way.
Patrick,
especially if you're interested in wanting to vote.
Did you just call the people who called Trump and made analogies to him being Hitler illiterate?
No,
but they are technically media illiterate. They are technically media illiterate because as we know, definitely didn't kill that many people.
No, so there's another thing though. There's people who are media illiterate, and then there's also cognitive dissonance. People who just, in a certain place, somebody can be very smart and also be able to tell if something's fabricated. But if somebody has such great belief in something, it's really hard to change that person's mind, no matter what clear factual information that's shown at them.
Yeah, there's always there's confirmation bias and stuff.
Yeah, so I think it's also important as we're wrapping up to not demonize people who can be shown as media illiterate, not to say that they're the bad people, and I don't think it's necessarily their fault, because I'm sure every single one of us has succumbed to this in some way, thinking something's true, and then because we really want to believe it, then finally admitting later on that it's not. We're all human, but again, these are important things that we need to look at. Nobody's perfect, nobody's evil in this sense. Just because you get something wrong does not make you evil, and that should be on every single aisle of every party, each person in every country. So, any other thoughts?
What?
Yeah, don't demonize people. Not everybody's a the majority of people, I would say, are good. It's important to
especially
train
when
your
it
brain.
comes to media literacy, because technically it's not their fault. As we learned, we said before, education is definitely the main player why media literacy occurs. And as a conclusion, that's definitely something to stress, right? So how can any country, you and everybody, in conclusion, do well in media literacy?
Some questions to ponder. Anthony?
Yeah.
Anthony wants
All
to
right.
bring up something right before
My
we.
final
No?
thoughts before I say my announcement. I think just like I think to top off what Danny and Patrick were saying. It's like just make sure you just follow the news properly. If you read like a website that's biased, make sure maybe I say recommend reading the other side, or maybe read independent journalism, or just or know a website that seeks the facts, and then you'll know if you're getting the right news. And speaking of journalism, I'm not a journalist myself, but I started a blog this this month, a couple weeks ago, and I just wanted to share with you all how if you want to read it, my website is anthonymiragliata.medium.com. So it's on Medium.
Plug
So
it in the link down below.
Go check it
the
out.
link down below.
Yeah.
There will be a link below. Thank you.
All right, everybody. I'll see you all next Friday. All right.
Have a
Right.
good one, everybody.
Have a good one.